Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the podcast you come to when you're finally ready to take fantasy hockey seriously. My name is Nibbelink. I'm the creator of Apples and Ginos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy, and in this podcast, I am going to break down the most puzzling players league-wide as determined by the Apples and Ginos Discord server. Let's get it. Welcome on in, everyone. Back for another week of puzzling players. Gotta talk about the most puzzling players. The number one player by far this week was JT Miller. It was not particularly close. JT Miller, last little bit here, has not been the whole season really has not been treating him too well. 23 goal, 46 point pace for JT Miller, averaging over 20 minutes a night. And IPP of 54%, 10.2 on ice shooting percentage, 13.5 individual shooting percentage. Not what we've come to expect from JT Miller. You have to believe, I think, that JT Miller is going to turn this thing around at some point. It does feel, the longer this goes on, the more it feels like he's just really feeling the weight of being the captain in New York and being responsible for turning the ship around from what was a very disappointing season last year for the Rangers. And yeah, that can weigh on a player. It wouldn't be the first player that's run into this kind of issue. So wouldn't be shocking if this was something that lasted for a good chunk of the season. It would be pretty shocking to me if it completely lasted the entire season. That would be pretty hard to understand, but the underlying numbers are still pretty horrific for JT Miller. 393rd in shots per 60 over the last little bit, 272nd individual expected goals for per 60, 166th in on ice expected goals for per 60. It's a really, really tough look for JT Miller at the moment. There's no two ways about that. And so it's hard for me to recommend him as a buy low. I think he should be a buy low, but there's always a chance that this is also due to some sort of underlying injury that we haven't been hearing about. And so there's a lot of potential reasons that could prevent JT Miller from having the type of fantasy season we envision he should be having at this point in time. And so JT Miller's not somebody I've been, sending trade offers for. I think the most likely scenario is that he bounces back, more in the back half of the season. I think that's the most likely scenario, but it's not necessarily a scenario I'm willing to bet on my teams. Good to see you, Dave. #0G. Stardoom17. Hey, Nate, which two are you dropping first between Bertuzzi, Zuccarello, Eklund, Landeskog, and Kreider? I can also drop my Orlov stream plus one of these Yahoo standard scoring. Yeah, it's probably going to be Orlov first, assuming that assuming the games played is all equal across the board if you're dropping Orlov. The Sharks have done a whole bunch of different things with that power play recently. They've done some 5-forward stuff. They've done Klingberg up there. They've done Orlov up there. I don't think Orlov is good enough to roster in most leagues without power play 1 personally, and so I think that that's a place where I probably would be dropping Orlov unless, because he's a defenseman, he is a player that you can fit in on all the nights, whereas some of these forwards, if you drop 2 of them, you're actually gaining games played. If that were the case, then it might change my answer. I like all of these players for you, and so I think it really would come down to the schedule for me pretty much completely. Whoever you're getting the most games out of, so that probably takes Kreider and Eklund off the list because they're obviously playing all off nights this week. And then it comes down to who's left from the rest of that group who you might be looking at dropping. You might be looking at dropping Bertuzzi there. Hard to say after he was so hot over the last little bit. You might be looking at dropping Zuccarello. Schedule not that great this week. Landeskog has an extra game played if you're getting that game in. So it might be Bertuzzi and then Zuccarello for me, unfortunately, but a good place to be for you for sure. Colin, happy Monday. Tell me legendary tales of holding Demidov. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is a good week schedule wise for Montreal. So if you're getting all of the games played from Demidov, then that makes sense. He does have 5 points in his last 5 games, but under 14 minutes average time on ice. He's been unable to crack the top power play unit for more than a game or two here or there. And that's just a tough place to be for fantasy, especially when you're not shooting. He's 300th in shots per 60, 283rd individual expected goals for per 60, and 155th in on ice expected goals for per 60 over the last little bit here. So yeah, I just don't think this is a player you have to hang on to at the moment. Certainly he's got the talent, certainly he's capable of a lot, but unless he's going to get more ice time, and especially power play 1, that's when we might see him truly pop off. It doesn't seem like we're going to get that while he's skating less than 14 minutes a night. Hey Nate, if I'm in a position where I have no doubt that I'll make the playoffs, would it be wise to take a trade loss, in quotations, for players with better playoff schedules? Yeah, obviously this depends by how much, right? Like, I'm trying to think of an example. If you're trading Connor McDavid for JT Miller just because JT Miller's playoff schedule is better, then yeah, that's probably not a move you want to make. But in a case where, it's maybe a pretty similar player, all things told, maybe you can even find a player with a better playoff schedule who's a bit of a buy low right now. If you can do that and you can kind of just take a slight haircut maybe on the projection rest of season, but get that extra, 2 or 3 potential off nights or games played in your playoffs window. If you're 8-0 right now and you're sitting pretty and you're feeling pretty good about your chances, then yeah, I think it's reasonable to start looking at trades like that. For myself, I'm often waiting longer to make these kinds of moves, and maybe that's not smart on my part. That's entirely possible. Maybe I'm just a little more pedal to the metal right to the finish line in that regard, and maybe that's a reason why I didn't push any of my teams across the line last year. Made playoffs in all my leagues, but didn't push any to a final championship. So yeah, take that for what it's worth, I guess. But yeah, if you're in a league where you feel really confident about your ability to, secure the bye if you have one in your league and to be there when all is said and done, then I'm definitely looking at my roster and thinking, yeah, actually I have a lot of guys who are all playing on heavy nights. All my core guys are playing on heavy nights. It might be worth it for me to actually take a little bit of a haircut on one of them to secure one of these teams that has a really good off night schedule through my league's playoff schedule, and to kind of mitigate that potential factor where I'd be basically forced to be benching some of my core players on some heavy nights through the playoffs if everything holds the way it is. Now, of course, injuries can happen and that situation may never come home to roost, and so that's kind of the calculus that you have to do for yourself based on your own specific team. But definitely, I think if you're like 8-0 right now, if you're in a league that you've been in this league for a while, you're going to be there when all is said and done, and you're going to be in a good spot for the playoffs, then I think it's reasonable to kind of take a step back and think about what you might be looking for come playoff time. Would you be dropping Zucker for Norris this week, 14-man points league? I mean, with Norris scoring a goal and an assist in the first period here, I think it's entirely reasonable to be thinking about dropping Jason Zucker for Norris. Playing on the top line with Tage Thompson doesn't hurt. Zach Benson on the other side. Yeah, I think I might drop Zucker for Norris immediately. Hey Nate, how's Malkin looking? Would you say he's droppable in a 14-man cat league? I talked about Malkin with Jason Chen. If you haven't listened to the flagship show that came out today, then definitely you should go back and check that out. Jason and I talked about Malkin. We both kind of agreed he's probably more of this kind of 20-goal, 60-ish point guy rest of season. And so in a 14-man cat league, he's not a big-time shooter. He's not a big-time hitter. He's not doing a ton of peripheral stuff for you. Then I think he's kind of on that fringe. In a 14-man, he's probably still rosterable rest of season, but he's trending more towards the streamer status, and especially if you're in a bit less active of a league where people aren't streaming pretty actively, then it might be the case where it is actually in your benefit to move on from Malkin and get a better streamer in. Hi Nate, can we get a peek at Benson please? Thanks so much for the great edutainment. All right, we can take a look at Benson. Zach Benson here has not had a great start, but does have an assist already in this first period against the Jets. The second period just started as we're recording this. Yeah, just a one assist so far on the Josh Norris goal. And prior to that, in his 4 games he had played since coming back from his injury, just 1 assist, about 16.5 minutes average time on ice, 289 in shots per 60, 282 individual expected goals for per 60, 118 in on ice expected goals for per 60. I do like Benson a fair bit. I think he is kind of the distributor to the shooters of Norris and Thompson. I think he can be pretty significant in that role for fantasy purposes. I think it's not that crazy to think that he could be like a 20-goal, 65-point pace guy rest of season if he's getting this line 1 power play 1 deployment. And I'm reasonably interested in Zach Benson at this point. I do think he needs some of those shooters to really take advantage of what he brings to the table as a playmaker and kind of as a puck hound. But I do think that Zach Benson is probably rosterable in more leagues than most people think he is. Hello, good evening, Nate. Hello to you, Lost Ones. Hey Nate, how do John Carlson and Gensel look under the hood? How concerned are you that Carlson is off power play 1 and Gensel hasn't been getting much EV deployment with Kucherov? So yeah, that has been a bit of a development over the last little bit. Hagel has been on the Kucherov line with Sorelli, and Jake Gensel has been tasked to kind of galvanize the Oliver Bjorkstrand, Dominic James line, which is obviously not ideal for Jake Gensel's fantasy stock. You want him to be there alongside Kucherov all the time. So yeah, you do have to take that into account. You'd be kind of crazy not to. But it hasn't affected him too badly so far. It's still 6 points in his last 5 games, over 19 minutes average time on ice, but the underlying stats have come down a bit, probably as a direct result of this even strength deployment. 233rd shots per 60, 274 individual expected goals for per 60, and 189th in on ice expected goals for per 60. I think the most likely scenario for me is that Gensel does get back with Kucherov pretty soon. I think maybe this is a bit more a function of Braden Point being out of the lineup, so hopefully Point is back and they kind of get back to what has been kind of their status quo in terms of the lines. That being said, it's working for Tampa Bay right now. They're doing really well. They have overcome their early season issues and have really turned things around as a team. And so they might not feel a whole lot of motivation to change things up too much. That being said, Jake Gensel is still such a mainstay on this team. As I mentioned, over 19 minutes a night. I don't think you're going to really be hurt by Gensel, but definitely while he's in this even strength deployment situation, you should adjust your expectations. For John Carlson, yeah, off the top power play with Jacob Chikrin just going off as of late, and them trying Ryan Leonard on that top power play as well. I think probably Carlson does get back on that top power play throughout the season. I mean, the last 5 games here, he's got a couple goals and 3 points, over 22 minutes average time on ice, still 8th amongst all defensemen in shots per 60, 6th individual expected goals for per 60, 16th on ice expected goals for per 60. So clearly that's not affecting him too badly. I think John Carlson is just fine. It's similar to Gensel, right? The deployment is worse, and so you should materially expect him to be worse in that reduced role. But he's still a great player, and for Carlson, the underlying numbers actually look terrific. And so, while I don't think he's going to hit this 20-goal, 72-point pace that he's on currently with the reduced role, I do think he probably gets that power play 1 back at some point throughout the season, even if it's alongside Chikrin. So I do think that over the course of the season, you should still expect Carlson to hover in and around that 55-point pace. Heard that Brent Clark is taking reps at power play 1. If he is on there, is he a brisk walk, light job, I guess that's a jog, or sprint to go get? I was unable to confirm this for myself. I had a limited amount of time putting kids to bed and then kind of running down here to get this going. So I was unable to confirm this for myself that Brent Clark did actually practice on the top power play. I didn't see it on, the who is it? It's Russell Morgan is the normal beat reporter there. So I'll do it live. We'll do it live together. Did Russell Morgan? Okay, it was Zach Dooley actually. Brant Clark taking practice reps today with Power Play 1. So that is pretty interesting. I'll go ahead and retweet that right now so that everybody's got it. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. There was an interesting quote that came out over the weekend about Jim Hiller saying basically they want to change up their power play, but they're going to wait until Drew Doughty was back to do it, which would imply, if not necessarily state outright, that Drew Doughty would probably go to the power play 1. That would just be a huge miss with a guy of Brant Clark's talent sitting around. But I'm very interested in Brant Clark if he's going to be on a top power play unit. I think that probably this is the best thing they could do for that power play unit. They've obviously done a long run of five forward power play units. I think you get Kuzmenko off there and you let Brant Clark run the point, let Kempe be a bit more of a threat down low and put that shot to work. And yeah, just let your best players get to work. That's, I think, what we all want to see. And I think that's possibly what we'll get. So yeah, I'm very excited about Brant Clark. The problem is I really don't trust Jim Hiller to keep him there. And so while I'd be excited to have him, I would be very reticent to just go out and shoot down all of my streaming plans for the week based on this, and only to have Jim Hiller pull the rug out from us yet again. The Kings, they only play 3 games this week, all on the heavy nights, so you're not getting some kind of added schedule benefit to add Brant Clark this week. So it has to really make sense for your team. If you're struggling on defense, like if you have, a couple of solid fantasy defensemen, but you've really had a rotating cast in the 3 and 4 spots, a lot of people are in that spot this year. A lot of defenseman injuries, a lot of interesting defenseman developments. So if that's you this year and you're struggling to fill out those 3 and 4 holes for your defensemen on your roster, then yeah, this might be a spot where you kind of feel like you have to take that swing because the upside is very good for Brant Clark. Really, really talented offensive defenseman. Some of the best AHL numbers we've seen in a while for a defenseman. Yeah, I just think he's a really talented player and has a long career ahead of him, especially as an offensive defenseman. All right, Puckstud, do you like any of Shabanov, Eberle, Huberdeau, Toffoli, or Cousins? For this week, I like Toffoli as long as he's playing alongside Celebrini and Smith, which he was in the last game here. So if that's going to continue, then I do like Toffoli for this week to get all those off nights. You can, I guess, make your own decisions about how likely he is to stay there. It's been a bit on again, off again for him on that top line and the power play for that matter as well. And so you're running the risk of a line 2 power play 2 to Foley, which in San Jose is pretty much a death knell, but you might get the line 1 power play 1 to Foley, which is actually pretty good. So if he's getting the high-end deployment, I think he's the best of the bunch. If not, then he might be the worst of the bunch, to be quite honest. I like Eberle, but not for this week. Seattle has a tough schedule this week, but a really good schedule next week. So if you can fit Eberle for his 2 games in at the end of the week, actually I think Seattle, Thursday and Saturday are their 2 games this week. If you can fit Eberle in for the end of week, maybe get like a Monday, Wednesday stream going here if you've got somebody already lined up for that, and then switch to Eberle for the Thursday, Saturday. He's getting a ton of minutes, and McCann is back. That's a long-time line mate for Eberle there in Seattle. Maybe that helps galvanize that power play a little bit as well. I could see a scenario in which Eberle has a really big week next week, especially as one of the premier streamers with Seattle's off-night schedule. And so that's a good spot, in my opinion, for Jordan Eberle. So those would be the 2 I like the most. Cousins, I have some hope for. The underlyings are starting to come around, and so maybe he's starting to figure it out. But also, it's been a tough go for Dylan Cousins through a good chunk of this season. He was playing on the line with Brady Tkachuk, and he was still on the top power play, so that's not a bad spot to be either. Drop Saros for Askarov. Volume not a priority, just better goalie stats. Yeah, I'd take Askarov there at the moment. Uncle Hurdle asks, "Hey Nate, how would I be able to access this sheet for myself?" Glad you asked. This sheet is a patron perk for patrons in the Apples or Ginos tier over on Patreon. Link is in the description of this video or this podcast, wherever you're listening. You can go there, and the Apples tier is $8 Canadian per month. The Ginos tier is $15 Canadian per month. Either one of those will get you access to this sheet. It's pinned up on the Patreon once you've signed up for a monthly $8 per month fee. Michael asks, "Hey Nate, 10 team cats, goals, assists, shots on goal, hits, power play points. Pick 2 of the following D rest of season: Morgan Riley, Rasmus Anderson, Seth Jones, Luke Hughes, Vince Dunn, Erik Karlsson. Are there even 2 above replacement level guys in this group with this scoring?" Yeah, I mean, this is pretty offense heavy, right? You only have hits as the kind of peripheral category, and the others are pretty offensively minded. So I like Seth Jones there. He's probably got the best all-around profile on that front. But man, this is a really tough look. Anderson is going right now, but that feels like it's got an expiration date, especially if he gets traded to a team that already has a top power play guy, and he's just kind of a power play 2, eat all the even strength and penalty kill minutes guy in his new scenario. So that's a real potential problem for him. Actually, I think Erik Karlsson in this setup is probably a pretty good shout. Let's see what Karlsson's been doing lately. I think he's might have some points in this game here tonight. Pittsburgh's up 3-1 after 2 periods, and Karlsson has a couple of power play assists, so that's obviously a good thing for your format. The underlings are fine, over 23.5 minutes average time on ice. Yeah, I think that it might be Erik Karlsson. Even if he gets traded somewhere, the thing with Erik Karlsson, right, if he gets traded somewhere, it's somebody who's acquiring him because of his offensive proclivities, somebody who needs a power play 1 guy. And so in the, I guess, quote-unquote worst case scenario for Karlsson, he's going to a place that might be just as good, if not even better, for offense. And so I think it might be Karlsson. Luke Hughes is the guy with the most upside, but also the lowest downside, I think, of this group, potentially, if he never gets the power play 1 there. And he's not a big-time shooter, definitely not a hitter, so not bringing you that. So I think final answer, Seth Jones, Erik Karlsson at this point in time. Do you like Saros more or Skinner for the rest of the season? Cats with wins, save percentage, and shutouts, or maybe Yari? I mean, I'm really not in the business of projecting goaltender performance. You're fully into territory here for me, where I am simply trying to look at the next week or two and see what kind of games played they're going to give me, who the teams they're playing against are going to be, how well the team in front of them is playing currently. These are the kinds of questions I'm asking myself about this tier of goaltender, and I'm making my decisions based on that more than, any specific stat about these particular goaltenders at this moment. So, I don't mind Jari right now. I think he's been playing well since returning, and, knock on wood, I guess, but he's having a good 2 periods here for the Penguins so far against Philadelphia. So I like that one. I think I might honestly take Jari at this moment in time, and that's literally just because of the what have you done for me lately factor. But that's, I think, where these 3 goaltenders are at. So you think Morgan Geekie can keep up with this pace? No, I don't. I think that he's definitely running hot. I did speak about Geekie in context of the Bruins power play on the pod yesterday with Jason. So definitely go back and look at that one. But Geekie has 6 goals in his last 5 games. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. Still just under 17 minutes average time on ice, which is kind of crazy. I kind of wonder about that, actually. I'm going to look this up because that seems absolutely insane given how crucial he's been to their success. I gotta figure out how legit this is, because that seems a bit wild to me. Let's see what Geeky's got. Yeah, no, just the one game where he's under 15 minutes, scored 2 goals anyway. Yeah. seems pretty legit at this point in terms of the ice time. But yeah, the 29% shooting percentage definitely going to come down. Probably the 72% IPP as well. Probably the 14.5% on ice shooting percentage comes down when his individual shooting percentage comes down. So no, I don't think he's going to score 61 goals on the season as he's currently pacing for. But I do think he can be like a 35 goal scorer on the season. Maybe as a pace rest of season if all goes well. I think 30 to 35 goals as a pace is definitely within the realm of possibility. Wyatt Johnston overall keeper outlook. What's his ADP look like next year? Yeah, I mean, if he's going to keep this up, what's his pace right now? Let's get him in here. I do want to mention, too, I saw Ehlers in there. We have Ehlers on the list, so we'll get to him. Yeah, Johnston has 5 goals and 9 points now in his last 5 with that huge hat trick plus an assist night yesterday, Sunday, against Ottawa there. 12 shots per 60, second individual expected goals for per 60, and third on ice expected goals for per 60 over the last 5 games on a 50-goal, 95-point pace. Now, yeah, he's running hot for sure, but, I mean, 40 goals and 85 points is definitely within the realm of possibility here, especially if this power play continues to cook. And if you heard the episode yesterday, you know that I think it's entirely possible that it does. I swear every time I join one of your live streams, I get an actual decent trade offer. This literally just came in. Kyle Connor plus Kevin Fiala for Tage Thompson, John Carlson. I have Darlene Fox, obviously on the IR. Carlson, Rasmus Anderson, and Lev Shunov. Yeah, that's a pretty good offer. I think it's relatively fair. Cats are goals, assists, power play, points, plus minus, shots, hits, blocks. Yeah, I think that's relatively fair. If you don't need the defenseman there, you're doing okay with Darlene. I mean, the Fox injury does make this a little tougher to stomach. I guess for me, it would probably depend on what defenseman you might be able to pick up to replace Carlson. If there's still somebody out there, I mean, if Brant Clark's out there, maybe you feel good about that, and you can go get Brant Clark, and maybe that works out for you. But overall, I think it's a pretty fair trade at this point in time. Benji says, I've got myself in a bit of a goaltender situation. Who would you prefer to look to trade off? Vasi, Kemper, Wedgwood, or Blackwood? I would prefer to move off of one of the 2 Colorado goalies, honestly. I don't like rostering the tandem. And if it was me, I would move off of Wedgwood. I think anything's possible with goaltenders, but the most likely scenario for Scott Wedgwood is that he still kind of is who he thought he was, and he kind of turns back into a pumpkin a little bit. Obviously, Colorado as a team has been playing just unbelievable hockey in front of him as well, and that's definitely contributed to his success. But if I had to pick one between the 2 Colorado goaltenders, I would still take Mackenzie Blackwood, and I would try to move off of Wedgwood for whatever I could. I don't like rostering the tandem because it feels like you're just kind of rooting against yourself. The best case scenario for either one of those 2 players is that the other one, gets hurt or starts to perform poorly, which in that case, you're kind of hurting yourself on one side to save yourself on the other. Messi19 _ edits. Hey, would you do Timo Meier for Suzuki and Dorofeyev in a hits league? I would. I think probably Suzuki and Dorofeyev, that side is better, but in a hits league like Meier does that, yeah, I'm taking the Suzuki Dorofeyev side there for sure. Puck said, is Duchesne a good IR stash? For sure, if you got an extra ad to do it with. What about Brazeau with Pittsburgh? Brazeau had that really nice start, but he's still on IR as of now. So when he's back, we can talk about it. But yeah, we got to see it. 0G1 for you. Cats wins. Goals against average, save percentage. Best option for next little while in this group. Decord, Vamelka, Allmark, Vladar. Cheers. That is an interesting question. I really like what Vladar's been doing there in in Philadelphia. They are obviously playing a pretty good game there under Rick Tocchet, and it seems to be a really good fit for Vladar right now. It probably falls apart at some point, but it seems to be a good spot. Allmark has been really up and down. Ottawa's been playing pretty well, but he himself has been pretty up and down. I still think he's probably the best of this group for the rest of the season, if I had to guess, just kind of based on track record. But at this exact moment in time, I might go with Vladar. Would you trade Geeky for Brat? Yes, I would. Should I keep Voronkov or drop for some players in better teams, even with lower fantasy points average? Yeah, it would really depend on who those players are. It's a little too general to give you specific advice, I think. Hello, Nate. Seth Jarvis long term in a Cats League. Yeah, we can throw up Seth Jarvis on the list here. Jarvis has 5 goals, no assists in his last 5. 20.5 minutes average time on ice, 33rd shots per 60, 31st individual expected goals for per 60, 58th on ice expected goals for per 60, 49 goals, 72 point pace on the season. I think the goals come down, but the assists come up. And yeah, I think Jarvis will be a 75-ish point guy when all is said and done. And I'd be pretty happy to have him in any league, to be honest. I think a little bit what you see is what you get, just with a few less goals and a few more assists. Any interest in Power Play 1 Jersey or guys like York and Sanheim better? Yeah, I mean, I'll give it a go. Yeah, I think that's honestly the best thing I can say about somebody on the top power play who just has never like quite popped off. I think that's all I can really say. Is I'd be interested to see it. I'd be interested to see it. So in a week like this, like Utah has a nice little schedule this week, so you can definitely do worse if he is going to get top power play a little bit more regularly. I think he could do worse in a week like this. How do you feel about this one? We already answered. Yo, Nate, my goat, good to see ya. Thoughts on Terry? Is he just a sell high? I don't believe so. If you know anything about me, you know I have a love affair that has gone on for quite some time with Troy Terry. He's got 7 points in his last 5, 21 minutes a night. 170th in shots per 60, 141 individual expected goals for per 60, 80th in on ice expected goals for per 60, 23 goal, 95 point pace on the season for Troy Terry. He's got a 15.5% on ice shooting percentage, which is high, but 66% IPP is actually kind of low for Troy Terry. So, yeah, I mean, I think he could be. I don't think he's going to score 95 on the season, but I think it's entirely possible in this iteration of the Ducks that he goes off for a point per game season here. Sam asks, what do we think about McCann coming back off injury? Is he worth the look next week when they have the ideal stream schedule, or wait and see how he does getting back into the groove? Yeah, I would definitely be interested in McCann. Maybe if you can fit him for the Thursday, Saturday this week, you grab him kind of ahead of time to make sure nobody else is grabbing him. If you have the luxury, if you don't think anybody else is going to pick him up, then maybe you wait and see how the Thursday, Saturday goes, if he's getting the deployment, top power play, top line, that kind of stuff, and you make your decision after that. Thoughts on Wedgwood rest of season or Wallstedt? Yeah, I mentioned Wedgwood. I think that the most likely scenario is that Blackwood kind of takes a bit more of that net back over the course of the season. But Wedgwood will be a good tandem goaltender for the time being, at least. And rest of season, like by the end of the season, your guess is as good as mine on that scenario. My best guess, and it really is just a hunch, I'm not making a whole lot of decisions based on this quote unquote analysis, but my best guess is that Wedgwood does kind of turn back into a pumpkin before the end of the year. Wallstedt, I think, is probably legit. Minnesota plays good defense. Wallstedt, a legit prospect for years, and just seems to be coming into his own in a real way. Thoughts on holding Beckett Seneca in a 12-team Bangers Pims? Yeah, I mean, for this week, if you need the bangers, if you need the Pims, then Seneca's probably not your guy. But if you just need some secondary scoring as a streamer with Anaheim's ideal schedule this week, then Seneca can absolutely do that. What's the deal with Braden Point? Is he a hold still? Well, hopefully you've got him in an IR spot on your roster, or an IR plus spot, I guess. If you're unable to do that, then it does get a little bit dicey. But I mean, I can't drop Braden Point in. I'm trying to think what the shallowest league, or the deepest league, I guess, where I would drop Braden Point would be. It would have to be 8 teams before I would consider dropping Braden Point with no IR plus. All right, we made it through the comments. We're back to the list. Let's dig back in with Gabriel Landeskog. Landeskog is a player I talked about on the Under the Hood segment in the show yesterday. And I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Landeskog. Did come out today that he and McKinnon are both under the weather. So hopefully he's good to go for tomorrow, by the game time tomorrow. But yeah, it might influence a little bit of what we see from Landeskog over the next couple of games. They have a back-to-back as well, Tuesday, Wednesday, if I'm remembering correctly, to start this week here. Is that right? No, they go Tuesday and then not again until Thursday. So hopefully he's okay either way. But I'm interested, because I do think that we're seeing underlying stats that suggest that Landeskog's not cooked. And if he's not cooked and he's going to get power play 1 rather there in Colorado, now we're really starting to have something. Had a big game there, had over 20 minutes in the one game there over the weekend. So yeah, things are definitely trending up for Landeskog. Old Zellweger was highly requested, 3 goals, 4 points in his last 5. Just a bit over 18 minutes average time on ice, but he's 4th amongst all defensemen. Shots per 60, 9th individual expected goals for per 60, 103rd in on ice expected goals for per 60. On the season, we're looking at a 16-goal, 33-point pace for Zellweger with, really good underlying stats across the board. I really like Zellweger. I think he's a terrific offensive defenseman and really suited well for Joel Quenneville's style here. I think that this is a spot where Zellweger can really pop off. And while he might not get quite enough deployment, he probably needs 20 plus minutes a night to really start to do more than just be like a fringe 4th defenseman, maybe 5th defenseman, maybe streamer in a lot of 12-team leagues. In a week like this, I've picked up Zellweger for this week in a bunch of spots. I think he's probably better than a lot of forward streams for this week, because I do think he's got a lot of offensive potential. If Jackson Lacombe ever goes down to injury, Owen Zellweger would be a massive, massive priority add. So I like that about him as well. Nikolai Ehlers, 1 goal, 3 points in his last 5, 16:45 average time on ice, 354th in shots per 60, 210th individual expected goals for per 60, 49th on ice expected goals for per 60. The shots drying up for Ehlers is a pretty puzzling development. On the season, he's still 50th in shots per 60. He was really chucking the puck earlier in the year, but that's really dried up as of late. Really tough to understand. I mean, 8.2% shooting percentage, 9.6% on ice shooting percentage. These numbers will bounce back for Ehlers, and the IPP should as well. It's just a matter of how long will it take at this point. It feels like I've been saying the same thing, like he's going to break through, he's going to break through, he's going to break through, and the underlying numbers just going to keep going worse for him individually, which is really, really puzzling, because this should be a spot where he's accustomed to kind of line 2 and getting some power play 1. I would say that I'm more nervous about Ehlers than I was previously, but I'm still holding him wherever I've got him. Patrick Kane has no goals but 5 assists in his last 5, 18 minutes 45 seconds average time on ice. In that span, 41st shots per 60, 39th individual expected goals for per 60, and 23rd in on ice expected goals for per 60. He's on a 68-point pace, and I think he could do even better than that. 8.6% on ice shooting percentage, 6% individual shooting percentage. Yeah, things are going to get better for Patrick Kane in the goal scoring front for sure. And I think, he should be a 75-ish point player still on this Detroit team with that power play. Adam Fantilli has 3 goals, 4 points in his last 5 before tonight's game. Does not have a point through 2 periods against the Devils tonight. 47th in shots per 60, 42nd individual expected goals for per 60, 92nd in on-ice expected goals for per 60 while skating over 20 minutes a night. Sean Monahan is a little banged up, we've learned, and so it makes sense that Fantilli is getting even more run. You have to love Fantilli while he's getting that kind of run. Marchenko being out has obviously hindered their offense somewhat. Werenski is also banged up. So, yeah, they're hurting with a lot of their key offensive players right now. But Fantilli getting 20 minutes a night, sign me up. Shimon Nemec has 2 goals, 3 points in his last 5. I don't know if he got in on anything here tonight. No, it doesn't look like he did. So far, anyway. 21 minutes average time on ice, though. Finally getting the training wheels taken off by Sheldon Keefe there. 39th in shots per 60, 13th individual expected goals for per 60, and 88th in on ice expected goals for per 60. I like Nemec. I think he's a pretty talented guy. If Keefe is going to let him run, and it's been a pretty good sample size now of Nemec getting a lot of minutes, I think that this is a guy who's firmly in the conversation as, that fourth defenseman on your roster. Like, Nemec versus a guy like Vince Dunn is a very real conversation at this point in time, just given, how effective that offense is in New Jersey, how effective Nemec has been individually versus how ineffective Dunn and the Kraken have been over there in Seattle. So, I've got a lot of time for Shimon Nemec. Darren Radish, another player that we talked about on the flagship show, so go back and check that out. I did see he was listed as day-to-day, so something to monitor there moving forward, but assuming full health for Darren Radish, big-time minutes, big-time power play opportunity, and cashing in on all of it. I really like that, and I think there's a pretty real chance at this point that Victor Hedman doesn't take power play 1 back when he comes back if Radish is able to keep up even a piece of this moving forward. Philip Forsberg, just 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in his last 5 games, 18.5 minutes average time on ice. That's not going to get it done for a guy of Philip Forsberg's stature. Still 29th in shots per 60, 83rd individual expected goals for per 60. In the practice here today, he was skating with Haula and Marchessault, while the Stamkos O'Reilly Evangelista line remains intact. They've also been playing with the power play units there in Nashville. In the last game, they had Stamkos, O'Reilly, Forsberg with Yossi and Shea as the unit, so a 2D look there. But they've been splitting it more 50-50 than ever before, so that's also of concern for your Philip Forsberg shares. It's a tough look at this point. I do think that things get better for him on the season, but again, it's a little bit of how long is that going to take? TikTok, we've got a fantasy season where we need to win some matches. So the 7.9% on ice shooting percentage is just horrific. I think that has to get better for Philip Forsberg. It's just, when is it going to get better, right, is the problem. But if you have them, I don't see how you're going to sell them low at this point. So you're definitely holding on to Forsberg and just praying that things are going to get better. Let's do Joel Eriksson Ek here, and then we'll get back to some comments. 1 goal, 3 points in his last 5 games, almost 21 minutes a night, 167th in shots per 60, 266 individual expected goals for per 60, 104 in on ice expected goals for per 60. In the last game, he was playing with Matt Boldy and Marcus Johansson. That's a decent setup. Obviously, anytime you could play with Kaprizov, you'd probably take that over anybody else, but it's still not a bad spot. Overall, I think that Joel Eriksson Ek is kind of who we thought he was. He's a guy who needs players around him to fully succeed, I guess is the way I can phrase it. Still on the top power play. He has had a tough year in terms of conversion. He's just on a 13-goal, 50-point pace at this point in the season. 48% IPP, 5.2% shooting percentage. These are numbers that are definitely going to rebound for him. He's definitely a buy low candidate, but also Marco Rossi is on his way back, and if he continues to struggle, then Marco Rossi, potentially could he possibly supplant Joel Eriksson Ek on, one of these top 6 lines on the top power play even? I don't think it's likely, but the more Eriksson Ek struggles, the more at least the question looms in your mind. So I think Eriksson Ek gets better, but he's got to get it going soon. All right, let's get back to the comments here. We did that one. Let's do this one. Calgary goalie situation, almost 50-50 now. This has been one of the more interesting situations where we didn't even think that Devin Cooley was necessarily going to be the guy, but he has kind of played his heart out for Calgary this year and played quite well. Uh, Dustin Wolf is the guy there for sure, but Calgary's not in a spot to kind of look a gift horse in the mouth when Devin Cooley is playing as well as he is. He has a 930 save percentage on the season, only 7 starts, so obviously it's a small sample size and all that, but he's been playing out of his mind so far this year. And yeah, I think in the interim, as long as Cooley is going really well and Wolf is not, why would they not at least split these starts for a bit? Let Dustin Wolf get himself right, and then probably over the course of the season, we get more Dustin Wolf. Sam says, just got the update. Forster is injured in tonight's game. That was my week-long stream, and I was happy to see what he could do. That is a tough run out there. I do like Forster. He had a nice little stretch, 5 goals in 5 games there. And yeah, that is a tough run out for sure. When your streamers get injured on night 1, it's never a good feeling. I did drop Sean Monahan for Kreider, and of course he scores today. Yeah, fantasy hockey life. You gotta love it. And Jay says, love your videos. First time on one of your lives. You're the GOAT. I appreciate you stopping by. I don't know about the accolades, but I appreciate the enthusiasm for sure. Liam says, would you try and buy point for a guy like Ehlers in a Bangers Cats league? That's an interesting one. I think, yeah, I would. I don't know if that would get it done, but it might be worth sending the offer at this point in time. Kind of 2 underperforming guys. Ehlers is healthy at the moment. Point isn't. Maybe you can get it done. Aaron says, I'm starting to wonder if the Jets even make the playoffs. They kind of stink without Helly. Thoughts? Yeah, on one hand, I think they're good enough to get it done. On the other hand, like the West, you gotta have your A game all the time in the West. You're not gonna get handed a playoff spot for free over in the West. That is for sure. So the Jets have to be better basically to continue to put themselves in a position to be in the playoffs. It's very tight right now. St. Louis is only 2 points out of a playoff spot. The Canucks are only 4. So it is very tight there currently. And the Jets are 1 point out with a game in hand on the Blackhawks. Yeah, all that to say, you can't replace Gunnar Hellebuck. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. So I don't think Eric Comrie is a guy who would even pretend to say that he could do that on his best day. And obviously the Jets are going to struggle because they've built that team around him. They've built their team a specific way to play with Connor Hellebuck in net, and when he's not there, it's not going to look nearly as good. Anthony asks, thoughts on Dylan Strome lately? We can take a look at Stromer. Just 1 assist in his last 5, over 18.5 minutes average time on ice, 347 shots per 60, 356 individual expected goals for per 60. He does that. 192nd in on ice expected goals for per 60. He's still on a 17 goal, 72 point pace, which is pretty solid. Just a 55% IPP, which is pretty low for him, but 15.3% on ice shooting percentage, which is on the high side. So that should balance out a bit. I still think he's a 75 point player when all is said and done. But yeah, it would be nice if he took at least 1 shot every once in a while. But overall, I think he's fine. Sam says, how does Boldy look under the hood? We can take a look here at Matt Boldy. 4 goals, 7 points in his last 5. 21 minutes a night, 40th shots per 60, 11th individual expected goals for per 60, 111th in on ice expected goals for per 60. He's on a 47 goal, 91 point pace. I mean, it's looking like the breakout for Matt Boldy. I don't see anything here that's wildly unsustainable. The IPP is on the high side, 72%. The shooting percentage on the high side, 17%. The on-ice shooting percentage on the high side, well, that's probably about in line with what you'd expect for Boldy, 12.9% currently. So basically, I think that Boldy is in a spot to finally have that point per game season plus. Maybe he doesn't quite hit 90 on the year, but it wouldn't be surprising to me if he does, especially given the great underlying stats. All right. We are back to the list. We can close it out, starting with Pavel Dorofeyev. This is a player we talked about as well on the flagship show. So once again, a spot where you should go back and check that out. Basically, I look at this point per game, this goal per or 82 game pace that Dorofeyev is on right now, 36 goal, 56 point pace on the season. And that looks about right to me. I think that he could do a little bit better. He needs to be a little bit better of a distributor probably to get there. With Mark Stone back, they have also kind of created this top 9 instead of a true top 6, and that's kind of leveled things out a little bit in terms of the deployment, and that's not ideal for a guy like Dorofeyev. So yeah, I think 35 goals, 55 to 60 points should be the expectation for Dorofeyev. He's going to have some hot streaks, he's going to have some cold streaks rest of season, but that's where he should end up. Zach Hyman, 1 goal, 3 points, his last 5, 18.5 minutes average time on ice. He's still skating, really good minutes there, but 222nd in shots per 60, 233rd individual expected goals for per 60, 193 on ice expected goals for per 60. He's on the top power play, playing with Connor McDavid at even strength. What more can you ask, really? I mean, what you can ask is that he starts shooting the way he has in the past. That part not being there is pretty concerning for Hyman. I think it's possible that the best of Hyman is simply in the past at this point, and he's just a little bit more of a limited player than we were used to. And so, yeah, I think maybe he's I think definitely he's better than what he's given us so far in this 7-game sample. It makes sense. He's coming back from a long layoff. Everybody else is in mid-season form. I'm not going to really hold it against him, but it might take him a while to ramp up. And even then, I don't know if his ramp up is, like 70.35 goals, Zach Hyman. I think it's maybe more likely that he ramps up to 25 to 30 goal, 55-ish point Zach Hyman. Matthew Barzal. I missed Luke Hughes. Can't miss him. 3 assists, no goals in his last 5. 23 minutes a night, so great deployment there. 56 shots per 60, 51st. Individual expected goals for per 60 is respectable. 81st in on-ice expected goals for per 60. Luke Hughes, the thing that we've always been talking about is he needs the power play time. Really has not been getting that. Even Nemec has overtaken him for some power play time here. They've let Luke Hughes be a shorthanded and even strength guy even more. I mean, come on, Sheldon Keefe, what are you doing to us? Just let us have all the fun things with Luke Hughes. I really do think that Luke Hughes would pop off given full power play 1 treatment and these kind of even strength minutes as well. It just doesn't feel like we're going to get that this year, and that just makes Luke Hughes into kind of this, like 3rd or 4th defenseman on your team. And it's just a tough spot to be. He's shooting 1.9% on the season, 9.9% on ice shooting percentage. Those numbers should go up. I think he'll be more like a 10 goal, 50 to 55 point player even without top power play, but we really need that top power play for him to truly pop off. Barzal next up, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in his last 5, 23.5 minutes average time on ice. Elite stuff there. 142nd shots per 60, 119 individual expected goals for per 60, and 5th in on-ice expected goals for per 60. Huge number there. The issue is that the Islanders are getting pretty banged up at this point. You see Palmieri go down with the ACL. Tough sight to see there. Barzal is really good at creating lots of looks, but the Isles just really lack finishers. It's a really tough spot to envision the ceiling scenario coming true from Matthew Barzal. I still think he's going to be better than he has been. The IPP should come up. The 9.5% on ice shooting percentage should come up, even if the Islanders are not great at scoring goals. So yeah, I think where I'm at rest of season would probably be, I think the 23 goal pace is probably pretty sustainable, but the assists should come up and we should put him back in that 70 to 75 point range as a pace rest of season. Rasmus Dahlin is next up, 2 assists in his last 5 games. I can check and see if he's gotten in on any of these 4 goals here tonight. nothing for Dahlin despite 4 goals for the Sabres. Tough for Dahlin rosterers, myself included. 25 minutes average time on ice, though. 18th shots per 60, 30th individual expected goals for per 60, 50th on ice expected goals for per 60. I mean, he's still on a 60-point pace on the season as of right now. That's with a 8.5% on ice shooting percentage. His IPP is really high, so those two things should balance each other out a bit. 1.7% individual shooting percentage. That's going to rebound in a big way for sure. I really like Dahlin. If you can buy low on him at this point, I doubt that you can buy low on Dahlin. Pretty well-known commodity in fantasy hockey circles at this point, but if you can, I would absolutely do it. Carter Verhaeghe next up. Talked about Verhaeghe on yesterday's pod as well, and some good stuff happening for him under the hood as of late, getting a little bit better and some points to show for it. So yeah, I think theoretically Verhaeghe is a buy low based on the metrics, the season-long metrics being well below expectation for him versus his career numbers. The problem is that Verhaeghe's been doing this for well over a year at this point, outside of the playoffs where he actually had a pretty good playoff run. So the question is this just who Verhaeghe is now, a less efficient version of his former self, or should we actually expect this bounce back to come through without Barkov, without Tkachuk in the lineup? Is that going to happen now, or is it going to wait maybe until Tkachuk is back? When Tkachuk comes back, is Verhaeghe bumped off the top power play? These are all the questions you have to ask yourself about Verhaeghe. And it's just not a player that I'm going to have a strong stance on either way, because a lot of things could change deployment-wise. A lot of things could change individual-wise. I think most likely he does rebound a bit from where he's at. He should get back to maybe a 25-goal, 60-point pace at a minimum. But I could also see where his deployment kind of trends away with Tkachuk coming back, and we kind of get this 55-point version of Verhaeghe for the rest of the season. Roman Josi has 3 points in his last 5 games, over 23 minutes average time on ice, 14th shots per 60, and first amongst all defensemen in individual expected goals for per 60. 64th in on-ice expected goals for per 60 is Roman Josi. 13-goal, 50-point pace on the season. And honestly, he's got a 61% IPP, which is extremely high, 7.7% on-ice shooting percentage, which is extremely low. Those two things probably meet in the middle somewhere. I think he's probably a 55-point defenseman on this Nashville team. Anywhere else, put him on Colorado right now, and he's a point-per-game player most likely. So it's good to see that Josi looks pretty solid under the hood. It's just, again, it's the Nashville situation. I don't think that he's going to have that ceiling scenario. 60 to 65 points is probably the ceiling scenario in Nashville for this year. Lastly on the list, and we'll close it out with some comments, 3 goals in the last 5 games for Thomas Hertl, just under 17 minutes average time on ice, 52nd shots per 60, first individual scoring chances for per 60, 50th in on-ice expected goals for per 60. On the season now, a 36 goal, 66-point pace, and honestly, that feels right about in line with where I had him at the beginning of the year. I think him and Dorofeyev are kind of on the season now, kind of leveled out to where we would expect them to sit rest of season. They'll have some hot streaks and some cold streaks, but I think right about now we're getting what we should expect. Really good underlying individual numbers there from Hertl, though, for sure. All right, back to the comments. We'll finish it up there. Thoughts on Mason McTavish finally putting up points, but has been brutal all year. Yeah, let's talk about McTavish here for a second. Mason McTavish, and I'll go back to the score just to see. I don't believe Anaheim's got anything extra going. He does have the first goal of the game, but nothing beyond that. Prior to this game here tonight, 5 points, 2 goals in his last 5. 16 minutes average time on ice, 98th shots per 60, 105 individual expected goals for per 60, and 100 in on-ice expected goals for per 60. I mean, you look up and he's on a 16-goal, 59-point pace, which is not too crazy. I think that he can sustain a 60 to 65-point pace pretty easily with some upside for more. The biggest problem for McTavish is that Leo Carlsson has so clearly surpassed him in terms of the pecking order at center there that McTavish is now just a 2C and probably a power play 2 guy. So your best case scenario is probably in the 60 to 65 point range. Hey, I see you have Demidov on the list here. What do you think of Slav in a Bangers Cats League? I'm hoping he heats up offensively, but the hits aren't that high this year. Yeah, the problem with Slavkovsky is now that he's getting bumped off top line, top power play for Zachary Bolduc. If that's going to continue, then that's going to really hamper Slavkovsky moving forward. Slavkovsky to me is kind of the third wheel there on that Suzuki Caulfield pairing. And when he's there, he'll have some fantasy relevance. When he's not there, I'm pretty uninterested in Slavkovsky at the moment. So that is a big problem for me. Any interest in power play one, line one, Shabanov at all? Some. I'm willing to give it a shot and see how it goes. He had like that one good game, and then everything else since has not been great. The on ice stuff looks pretty good, but it's been a pretty up and down season for Shabanov so far. He needs to just build some chemistry and get things going. If he's able to do that, I think it's definitely possible that he does some good things. The underlying numbers are not bad, definitely, but they're not exceptional either. So we need to see something from him now that he's getting this deployment. If you want to take a ride, if you're in a deeper league, if you want to take a ride for this week and see how it goes, I'm definitely not going to tell you no. Benji, Nate, appreciate the podcast. How is Adam Fantilli looking to you under the hood? Yeah, we touched on Fantilli earlier. He looks pretty solid, lots of minutes. Sean Monahan's a bit banged up. I'm big into Adam Fantilli. Last ones, I got a logjam at center with Tavares, Heischer, Fantilli, Lundell, and Josh Norris. No one is going to trade with me, unfortunately. Who would you drop first? Probably depends on your settings. If they're a bit more shot and hit heavy, then Lundell would probably actually be the first drop, which feels a little bit crazy to say, but yeah, Josh Norris is going to hit a lot and probably shoot more than Lundell. So yeah, if that's the case in your league, then I might go with Norris over Lundell. Lundell is definitely safer than Norris, but Norris has higher upside in a league like that. If it's a bit more like points only, like leaning more towards a points only format where just raw points is the most important thing, then I would take Lundell over Norris. Jeek or Cousins? I would still take Jeek there, but it's becoming more of a conversation day by day. Thoughts on Jesper Bratt and Darnell Nurse? Also just traded for Bouchard. Do you think his production will increase? Yeah, I think Bouchard will get a little bit better for sure. Jesper Bratt, I think, is one of the buy lows right now. Darnell Nurse, I've said this a few times now. He kind of is what he is. He's a 30, 35 point defenseman with great peripherals. And if that's valuable in your league, you can hang on to him, but he's not going to win you your league. He's just going to exist on your team. Powerplay 1, Hampus Lindholm is puzzling. He definitely is. Another player we talked about yesterday. Is Jamie Benn having a breakout year at 36 years old? But seriously, how's he under the hood? Let's throw Jamie Benn in here for a minute and take a quick look. 3 goals, 5 points in his last 5 games, under 13 minutes average time on ice, 133 shots per 60, 67 individual expected goals for per 60, and 70th in on ice expected goals for per 60. I mean, yeah, if he's going to play up on that Rantanen and Johnson line, he's probably going to run into some points. I just don't know if he's got the wheels to hang with those guys all year long. But as long as he's there, I'm willing to take a ride. Simon says, hey Nate, I recently dealt Wedgwood to improve my D. Would you say getting rid of overperforming goalies in trades is part of the 0G strategy? Is that something you're looking to do usually? Yeah, if I have the opportunity to, I definitely do look to make those kind of trades. The best example I have of this is one year where Frederik Andersen was popping off to start the year and Mark Scheifele was struggling. I traded Frederik Andersen for Mark Scheifele straight up in a league, and that was just a huge win, obviously, over the course of the season. You can get these sometimes, especially early in the season when everybody's panicking about how everything they thought prior to the season is completely wrong. If you can take advantage, you definitely should. Looks like the old Pettersson is back. What do you think? I don't think he's back. I think he's had a really good run here. I think that the same structural issues still exist with Vancouver, but it is nice to see, especially the 17th in individual expected goals for per 60 number and the 20th in on ice expected goals for per 60 number. Really good stuff there for Pettersson. It's a good run. I don't know that he's all the way back. But yeah, I think he's got more potential for point per game than I would have given him a couple weeks ago for sure. It's definitely an upward trend. How is Bedard looking under the hood? We can throw him in here for sure. He's got 3 goals, 8 points in his last 5, 21 and 3/4 of a minute average time on ice, 93rd shots per 60, 90th individual expected goals for per 60, 74th on ice expected goals for per 60. Yeah, those are good numbers, but not great numbers, I guess I would say. On the season, a 52-goal, 121-point pace for Connor Bedard. He's running extremely hot for sure, but we love to see it. I think he's definitely on track to break 100 points at the very least, even when some of these percentages come back down to earth. And yeah, I think he's fully capable of something in that range given this 21-minute deployment and some newfound chemistry with guys like Burakovsky and better even strength offense for the Blackhawks, is what I'll say. Thoughts on goalies this year? I have Kemper and Askarov. Do you think they can do well enough for me, or should I try and trade up? I'm not really trying to trade up at goaltenders. I'm willing to ride with what I've got while it's working and then look to move off when it stops working. That's pretty much how I'm going to handle it in almost every spot. Would you take Verhaeghe over Patrick Kane rest of season? In most leagues, I think I'm taking Kane there. All right, last one, and then I will be getting out of here. I guess this is JJ asks, do you think Nuge is playing well enough to hold that power play 1 spot even after Roslovic comes back? Yeah, I think there's enough organizational inertia for Nuge to stay there. I think they're just pretty comfortable with what a part he's been of some really elite power play units there over the, how many years has it been now at this point with McDavid and Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins and Bouchard and these guys. So, yeah, I think that Nugent Hopkins most likely can hang on to that spot, and I'd be a little bit surprised if Roslovic supplants him when he comes back. All right, I think we did it. We made it to the end of this week's Puzzling Players. Thanks to everybody for joining me. Love talking to you and, yeah, just trying to make sense of these puzzling players together. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, but we have some metrics that we can put on our side and be right more often than we're wrong. And that's what we're trying to do here. But that is going to be all that we've got for this episode. So hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard and saw today came from Natural Stat Trick and 18 Skaters. Many thanks to Matt Creamer for supplying the music for the podcast. That's it, folks. Much love.